League of Legends has more than 20 unreleased champions that didn't fit in the game. Through leaks and data mining, fans were able to piece together these interesting characters that could have been one of your favorite champions. Can you guess which champion almost ended up looking like this? But wait, first let me present you the champion that was too advanced for the League engine to run. All the way back in beta, rioters were developing this watery creature called Belsoterios, the Hydro Soul. He was a high priest that was making people his acolytes by drowning them, then pulling them back to the shore and reviving them. That apparently made them his helpers, but he still wasn't satisfied, so he tried doing it on himself. Sure, he became more powerful, but at the cost of becoming this watery creature. Nicknamed the Water Wizard, well, was a ranged support that used mana. In today's time, his kit would be considered an overtuned combination of multiple supports defining abilities. His passive, called Shooting Cora, regenerated nearby allies' mana. He was able to spawn his pet seahorse with his Q, but nothing more is known about that. The possibilities are endless, but the animal would most likely function similar to Azir's soldiers. Crashing Wave was very similar to Znami's ultimate, as it served the same purpose. His E was Janna's Tornado, but instead of knocking up enemies, it slowed them. Its icon is still used to display the buff from Janna's E. And finally, his ultimate Torrent was a storm that covered the entire map, healing allies and increasing their mana regen and spell damage. Despite him being completely busted, the main reason for his removal, stated by Drought Ezreal, was the fact that League's engine just wasn't able to run him. We have to understand that back then, they were drawing icons in MS Paint, so let's cut them some slack here. In today's time, he mostly resembles Nami, but it is said that he inspired someone far more cool. Seth, not to be confused with Seth, was a sand mage that was first similar to well, but he controlled sand instead of water. But later leaks revealed that he was more of a control mage with a huge teamfight potential. He to this day has one of the most interesting design ideas. The sand mage should spread sand across the map, trying to cover as much of it as he possibly can. This could either be done passively, similar to Zerg in StarCraft, which would force the enemy team to prevent it or play around it, allowing for much more dynamic games, or actively, with the use of his abilities. The later concept was explored a lot more, with each of his abilities leaving sand on the map for several minutes. Similar to Talia's Q, if an enemy stood in the sand and you landed an ability, it gave a bonus effect, like extra range or a knock-up. In this edition, Seth also had a so-called sand body, but he was everything but a body to opponents. His only other known ability was his ultimate. Similar to other mages, it has a huge ground control radius, pulling enemies close together. But unfortunately, Seth faced the same fate as his predecessor, because with all the additional sand particles across the map, lower-end computers would take too much of a performance hit for him to become a reality. To hit worldwide players, we just couldn't go into this design space, Colt says, which still breaks my heart, because it was dope. His development was later on taken by certainly T, who according to a concept artist started going slightly insane over the sand, stating, Brad was like, what even is sand? Does it burn like fire, or is it slow like ice? What is it? Then he went crazy and didn't want to work on the champion anymore. And with that, Seth's development came to an end. But his story finishes on a good note. If you haven't noticed until now, his abilities, but mainly his looks, were a huge inspiration for Azir, and with that, the Sand Magician quickly turned into the Lost Emperor of Shurima. Furthermore, there is still hope for his defining sand spreading ability, as no one in the game explored this mechanic much more, with many commenters also stating that this would work really well with a champion from the Shadow Isles who would spread darkness and evil. Do you still remember the question from the beginning? Well, to answer it, it's braum. No, I'm not joking. In development, the sexy mustache protector we know as today was known as Sissy. Her shield would have a Hextech technology instead of just being a door. She would also share a similar personality with Vi's early concept, Ruby, with both of them being this sarcastic, energetic punk. Both of these concepts suffer a similar issue of their looks and personality not matching their gameplay. Not much more is known about Sissy, other than that braum inherited her mechanics, without much change. Sticking with champions that didn't make it past the drawing phase, we've got Tiki. His development started very early on in the game's existence, but kept being pushed back until he was eventually cancelled. The statue that clearly takes inspiration from ones on Hawaii was planned to be Riot's first attempt at voodoo magic. Nothing more is known, but we can speculate that he inspired the Mumu, or maybe even Shaco. Despite that, the idea is still very relevant today, as the game still hasn't taken a dive into dark magic. Additionally, he could introduce another island to the map of Runeterra, as the main one is beginning to be a bit full. While very little is known about Tiki, even less is known about the mysterious Void Ray. One would assume this was just his development name, but nevertheless, no sketches or designs have surfaced other than a sneaky appearance in several artworks from other champions. He can be seen as a blurry airborne creature in the background, but just as fast as he appeared, he disappeared, without leaving a single trace. Its concept was actually already approved, but never saw the light of day, as they couldn't find the fitting kit and didn't own the proper tech to support it. Or at least until Belveth was worked on, when art director, the Bravo Ray, revived the 10-year-old concept that was long forgotten. And just like that, summoners are unknowingly being slapped by a creature that once went by the name of Void Ray. While Belveth looks similar to the original Manta Ray, this isn't the case with Ivan, the Mad Bomber. The crazy lunatic was first presented in a PAX East panel in 2015, where rioters were mainly covering his looks and artwork. He was meant to be a chaotic bomber, with his gameplay reflecting the chaos. They attempted to make his kit random, yet still fun to use, but they soon encountered an issue. His W was meant to be a bomb that could launch away him or his enemies, but that was counterintuitive to his design. How was a heavily armored character supposed to be just tossed around? But when it seemed that they have hit a roadblock, an unlikely opportunity presented itself. Through his later design, we can see him wearing this familiar looking helmet that ended up giving characters an idea. Parallel to that, they have also been working on an anchor swinging Yordle. His design was also not coming along all that great, as the similarities with Poppy were just too obvious, so they decided to switch things up a bit. Yordle received the bombs and craziness, while the armored guy inherited the anvil and also got to keep his helmet. And just like that, Ivan the Mad Bomber became Ziggs, the even madder bomber, and Nautilus, the giant underwater thing. Going back to his sketches, Ivan was unfortunately probably never meant to be. Him being a slow-paced magician that bursted out damage probably just wasn't unique enough. Another similarity that also pops up is Brand. Now he uses fire, yes, but the skins tell a different story. Taking a look at Crykor Brand, one could even mix up the two of them. Later on, his battle boss skin resembles him quite a lot, while his Debonar skin is holding flames that could very easily be mixed up with Ivan's Hextech potions. Every design so far never made it through the sketching, or didn't end up fitting in the game, but this wasn't the case with what is probably the most famous unreleased champion. Averdrian, just like many others on the list, was worked on very early in the game's development. A mystery always surrounds his release, but players began to lose hope when he appeared inside the coffin on the bottom of the Halloween map. But not all was lost thanks to Riot Nocturne's efforts. He tried to make him work and even had him as his profile picture on the official League of Legends forum. He promised that he will proudly keep using it until Averdrian is officially cancelled. But sadly, that time came very soon, as in July 2011 he finally changed it to Ravager Nocturne, marking the official date of Averdrian's cancellation. But what makes him so special? Why is he thought of so fondly by the community? Well, unlike other designs, his was never really reused. No one comes even close to him by looks, especially considering that he was rumored to be from the Shadow Isles. If that's him, there's nothing else mentioning this fact. The only thing that remained of his looks were the markings of Malzahar's forehead, and even that got scrapped later on. But as hinted before, he was different to other unreleased champions, as the entirety of his kit is known, thanks to user /pixelbuts. He's an active member of the League community, and one of his passions is collecting data. You might recognize his works, as he's the one digging up and storing information from League patches for the last 13 years. Originally nicknamed the Smurf Abortion, his lore was his mommy didn't love him, left him in the trash can soon after he was ejected. This is the reason behind his lack of ethical behavior. Poor sod. He took it a bit more seriously later and nicknamed him the Astral Guardian. His passive, called the Astral Barrier, only consisted of a short description stating 4 astral spirits. I really hope this looked like some early Aurelion balls. You will be missed. But they were meant to be consumed by his E. The ability would absorb one of them, empowering him and activating a damage dealing aura around him, most likely similar to Karthus' E or Diana's W. You might recognize this icon as the Baron buff, but it used to be his Q. It is the only thing that officially remains of him today. The ability's name was Astral Beam, and it sent a beam of light to an enemy, dealing damage. It could not be prevented in any way. Although nothing is confirmed or denied, his W is oddly similar to Vladimir Z. It would release a pulse of energy, dealing damage around him and slowing enemies' hit. And at last, his ultimate. This is where the crime against humanity first came into being. His R is just like Malzahar's R. Knowing that Averdrian was an inspiration to the void loser we have today, we can safely assume that this is where it originates from. It is said that it lasts up to 5 seconds, meaning that it could be cancelled, so Kadral wouldn't be safe anyway.
Oh my god!
Remember earlier when I said that Averdrian is probably the most famous unreleased champion? Well, the only one that rivals him is our Shin. Dragon Champion was one of the community's biggest wishes for a while, and rioters weren't holding back with this concept. They made absolutely sure that he would come off as extremely cool in every aspect, all the way to his name. Ao is a family name of the mythological Dragon Kings, while Shin means prosperity. The first official announcement was in a September 2013 Chinese Worlds Qualifiers broadcast, which was a preview of his lore and concept art. Even if he got hinted at before, the word about him quickly spread around the players, and he became one of the most anticipated champions to this date. It was intended for him to be the Storm Dragon that helped Ionia when they needed him most, just like some Avatar shit. Riot tested a lot of different variants and abilities, but he was always intended to provide both damage and support for his team. Nothing specific ever surfaced, but rioters still shared their concept ideas. The first major idea they toyed with was a flight mechanic. First thought to be permanent and then toggled, it's obvious how that would add to his appearance, but it just wasn't meant to be. Being capable of flying meant that he would be able to go over walls, which would grant him too much vision. Additionally, he would avoid other champions way too easily, especially if they were melee. Balancing such a mechanic would take up most of his budget, so that's not the path designers chose. Another ability they intended to use was a Stormclaw that he could send anywhere on the map, which would mark enemies in the area. He would then be able to dash to them and unleash a massive bolt of lightning, which would give him just insane map pressure. The ability was also supposed to have an execute, similar to Lee Sin's Resignation Strike. Despite the hype and great ideas, Riot had to admit their flaws. As stated in a blog post, our Shin was simply leaked too early. They were unable to make him fit in the game, so unfortunately, they had to let him go. But his influence just started at this point. Firstly, he changed Riot's approach to communicating with the fans, them stating that moving forward, they will be a lot more communicative and transparent. From that point on, every Rioter was allowed to share their thoughts, works and ideas with their outside world. Until today, he remains as a memorial for our beloved company to be more communicative, which they had to relearn after the Season 13 cinematic. Secondly, his design was reused as Aurelion's soul. They replaced the Storm with Galaxy, and just like that, the Starforger was born. Unless you've been playing the game for a week, the only concept Aurelion inherited at first was the flight mechanic, but recently Riot reworked his abilities into something that is a lot more similar to what Shin was supposed to be. The Storm Dragon furthermore influenced the game with his own skin and a TFT champion. Shin might not be a playable champion, but every time I pick up Aurelion, just remember that he was once a mighty helper of the people. Being deep into researching unreleased champions, I found a miner named Mardok. His development began in beta, but the community only found out about him when his author, Jestercap, showed off his portfolio on a forum. He was an archaeologist that disappeared during an expedition and got possessed by dark forces. He is now an undead skeletal fisherman that thrives off of other creatures' life force. He craves this so much that he finally re-emerged from his caves. Despite him being officially cancelled, he was a very fleshed out concept. Nothing specific has surfaced, so we can only go off of the concept art. He had a souls meter that was presumably his passive, meaning that he would collect souls, which was later used for champions like Christmas, Nunu, and yeah, I guess also Thresh. One of his abilities was a net toss, something similar to what we can see in Rengar's kit today. We can also see a spear that was meant to be his weapon, most likely for auto attacks, as he is still holding it when using his fishing rod. This kinda reminds me of the Minecraft pig chasing a carrot, not gonna lie. His only confirmed ability was his ultimate, which was later given to Fizz. The little fish inherited everything, even the name of it. Now I might wonder what the reason for his cancellation would be, considering that he looks and plays unique and also sounds like he fits in the game. Well, the problem arose with China, as they didn't look at having a skeleton character very fondly. so Riot avoided the hassle altogether and stored him away. But not all the blame should be directed towards them, as he was rumored to be in a weird spot even before the limitations. An unreleased champion doesn't mean that they were locked away and forgotten, but it stands for a concept that is there as a reminder that true greatness is achieved through trial and error. Which design do you think would work the best in the game? Let me know in the comments, I'm always happy to discuss. With all said, the Lost Champions iceberg has only been scratched.